Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Arapides here on behalf of the marketing team at School Health. I'd like to thank you for joining us today and participating in our Improving Hearing Screenings in Educational Settings webinar. Joining us today is audiologist Dr. Carrie Browning, coordinator for Sumner County Coordinated School Health, Janel Garrett, and School Health's Vision, Hearing, and Electronic Health Records Senior Specialist, Maryellen O'Keefe-Smith. All three of our guests have spent a multitude of time to plan, coordinate, and gather hearing screenings for schools and districts. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us, and we would also like to thank everyone who has joined today as well. Before I turn the time over to Carrie, Janel, and Maryellen, I would like to review a few quick things about today's webinar. We will not be taking audio questions, but you can submit your questions via the Questions Interface tab in GoToWebinar. You can submit your questions anytime during the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and a link to it will be posted on the schoolhealth.com website. We will also email the link to you for future playback. In that same email, everyone who attends today's webinar will also be receiving a certificate of attendance for joining us. This email will come from School Health, not GoToWebinar. If you are having technical difficulties with the audio or visual portion of today's webinar, please call GoToWebinar directly at 855-352-9003. That number once again is 855-352-9003. With that being said, let's turn the time over to Maryellen.
Thanks, Alex, and thank you all for joining us today. It's our pleasure to be able to speak with you about some of the topics that have come up. I want to thank everyone who submitted questions in advance during their registration process. We did get a lot of questions, some that we will get to today, others we'll contact you separately if we don't get to them. But here's a bit about the topics we're going to talk about. There was an overwhelming amount of questions regarding the process, the hearing screening process. Especially for the different age ranges, pre-K, preschool, school-age children. Also, many of you asked about how we could screen, better screen, I should say, special education. What are some tips and techniques that are available? So we'll be addressing that. Also, accommodation tips for teachers, you know, how we work with teachers in the school setting when hearing screenings are being done. A lot of people wanted to know, you know, what the checklist would look like on forms as well for referrals. And then some of you did ask about equipment, so we'll go over briefly some of the equipment that's available, OAEs and audiometers, and then some funding information that's available and ways that you can gain funding, and then also maintenance and storage tips of your devices. We know that they're an investment for you, and we want to make sure that you can, you know, keep them in the best working condition possible. So as we get started, why we screen, this is described as by ASHA that the purpose of these screenings is to identify school-age children most likely to have peripheral hearing impairments that may interfere with education, health, development, and communication. So let's get right to the process of screening. One of the biggest questions we received was, how do you screen children that are already diagnosed with hearing loss? And Janel, you had some experience with this, so please explain to us, you know, your techniques for doing this.
Sure. So just because they are nonverbal doesn't mean that they can't hear the instruction. We know that children will already be under the care of an audiologist often if they have a hearing aid or a cochlear implant. And so we provide them with instruction in the regular classroom. When teachers are aware of hearing loss in a student, we know accommodations can be made.
Thank you. Carrie, I know that you have a lot of experience with screening children, and these are some steps that you can take by age range. So the next few slides we're going to go through are going to explain all of that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest questions was just some general guidelines on how to perform a screening. So that's what I'm going to go through right now. And we do break it up into a couple of different age ranges. We break it up into those 3 to 5 year olds and then 5 and older, because there's different screening techniques for each of the groups. So when you're talking about those little kiddos that, you know, they're not quite able to just follow the instruction, when you hear the beep, raise your hand, that's when you're going to want to make it into a game. And we call it kind of conditioned play. Audiometry is really the technique that's used in the screening process. And so what you do is you want to have some toys available, some blocks. I've used like little plastic teddy bears, you know, something that you can, that you have many different objects available to the child. And then you're just going to tell them, okay, when you hear the tone, I want you to drop the block into the bucket, or I want, when the bear hears the birdie, I want the bear's going to jump into the bucket, something like that, just so it turns into a game for them and they're more apt to work with you. So when you're starting it though, you really want to make sure that they're aware of what's going to be happening. So you're going to be presenting the tone to them, and I recommend that you have the headphones off of the child, you turn the volume of the audiometer up, and so you're hearing the tone along with them hearing the tone. And when you present it, you're going to be, you know, excited and be like, that's the tone that I'm looking for. And then you're going to have that toy in your hand, and you're going to show them what you need, what you want them to do. So the tone is presented. I heard the tone. Here, I put the block in the bucket. So you're going to be going through that process. And when after you do it a couple of times, at that elevated tone, then you're going to want to give that toy to the child and have them do it on their own. And sometimes you might want to guide their hand those first couple of times that you're doing it, so that they can understand and know what's happening. So I'll present the tone again. There, I heard it, and then I guide their hand in putting that block into the bucket. A lot of times these kids are pretty quick to know what they need to do, so it doesn't take a lot of repetitions, but you do definitely want to make sure that they do understand the process. Once you feel that they do understand the process at that elevated tone, then you explain to them that now we're going to put those headphones on, and you're going to hear those sounds again, those birdies again. When you do, put the block in the bucket. And so you're just doing it again, putting the headphones on. You're starting at an elevated level from your screening level, not at the maximum output of the audiometer, but at an elevated level. So maybe like 40 or 50 dB level on the audiometer is where you're going to want to start. And you're going to present the tone once again, having them put that block into the bucket, making it exciting for them, congratulating them when they did hear it and did perform the task. Once you're confident that they are able to do the test or the process, then you're going to want to start putting it at that screening level. So if that's 20 dB or 25 dB, whatever it is for your particular state, at that first frequency, turn it to that level, present the tone again, and have them continue with the toys. Just continue to go throughout the rest of those frequencies at the screening level that you want until you complete the test. If you go to the next screen, please, or next slide, please. When you get to those older kids, those five years and older, where you're pretty confident that they know how to follow the instructions and they could just raise their hand for you, then same concept is just provide the instruction to them, letting them know what you're wanting them to do, place the headphones on their ears after you give them the instructions so you're confident that they could hear what you are telling them to do. Place the headphones on their ears, and then you can still continue at that elevated level, that conditioning level. So at 40 or 50 dB, presenting the tone to the child and making sure that they can hear that tone and understand what really sound they're supposed to be hearing for. So present it, making sure they can raise their hand or push a button, whatever your process is for the older kids. You know, they confirm it for you. And then once you're confident that they know what they need to do, then start moving to that screening level again, continue through those frequencies as well as at the levels that are required for your particular state or guidelines. Next slide, please.
So Carrie, just real quickly, one of the questions about raising their hand was, do they have to raise the same hand? And I know with your experience, or Janelle with yours, you know, what would be your guidance on something like that?
Yeah, it really is not required for them to raise the hand per ear. It really is just giving you an indication, and however that indication is that you want from them, so that you know that they heard it. So putting that stipulation where, well, if you hear it in your right ear, raise your right hand, putting in your left ear, raise your left hand, it really isn't necessary. The goal is just for them to identify to you that they heard the tone.
I will completely agree with that. We find that less is best. So keep it short and simple, and just raise your hand so we know you heard the sound.
Great, thank you. So how do you conduct a test? This is also part of the process, just going through it again based on some of the questions we received.
Yeah, so these are just some tips and tricks or some additional information to go along with conducting the screening. So one thing you can do is explain the process. Obviously, you need to explain the process to the child before you perform the test, but you can also do that in a group setting. So if you have those little kiddos, you might be able to go into the classroom, maybe take a stuffed animal with you, take the audiometer with you, take the headphones with you, so you can kind of show them the process that's actually going to be occurring, or even work with the teacher and have them maybe do some lessons or something about hearing, and so that when you come in to talk about hearing and the screening that's going to be happening, they're kind of familiar with what that process is. So you can certainly do that in a group setting. I would still encourage you right before the test to give them some indication of what you're expecting from them, but it's a nice idea to kind of put it into a classroom lesson type plan. You can also, maybe if you have an individual that the teacher knows is a very good listener and you will follow the instructions, you could maybe have them do the test in front of them so that they can see somebody doing it and maybe not be so scared or worried about it. Placing the headphones on the child, I would recommend, if they have any glasses, to remove them. What happens is you can have some slit leaks, that some of that sound can be coming out of the headphones, and so we don't want that to happen. Also, sometimes those headphones are very tight, and so having them pushing on the ears with glasses on as well is very uncomfortable. I have here the red goes on the right ear, and the blue goes on the left ear. And the reason I just want to mention this is, even it doesn't matter how much you screen, even the people that are very experienced, it's one of those things that you can make a mistake. And so before you start the test, I would just really encourage you to just double check that you do have the headphones on the right ears, because it's pretty easy to flip them around. You kind of get into the monotonous of it, and you just might make a simple mistake. So you don't want to do that. Also, confirming the test ear frequency and the volume. So when you're looking at your audiometer before you're going to start presenting anything, making sure it's set up for that particular child. Sometimes, we leave it to where the last child left off, and then we forget and we just start presenting right away. So that's another nice tip before you start testing or screening that child. Just look at it and confirm you're exactly where you want to be to start that test and progressing through it, so there's not any mistakes that can occur there. I also do recommend you do present multiple tones at the frequency. So once you have a response, we do encourage you, it's American Academy of Audiology as well as ASHA, they do recommend that you do present that tone a couple of times just to confirm that the response is there. Now, all state guidelines don't specify that or require you to do that, but it is one of those best practice types of things. But also, it's where you do not want to continuously present the tone until you get your 2 passes. You really should not present that tone any more than 4 times per frequency. So don't just continue to present until you get a response, unless like, oh, there was a loud noise at that time, so maybe they didn't hear that particular one. You have some opportunity to add presentations, but really try to stick to 4 presentations, or no more than 4 presentations. And then the last one, complete one ear and then switch to the next ear. You certainly can recondition that child, or if the child mid-ear becomes distracted, you can certainly raise the volume, draw their attention back so that you can continue on with the testing. So it's certainly fine to do that. There's no reason you can't do that. That's just not part of the screening process. That's just kind of an added portion that you're doing, just so that you don't have to come back and rescreen them to try to really get the results that you need. One thing I don't have on here, but I would encourage, because this actually happened to me during my screening process, is I had a child, he was about 3 years of age, and we were doing the condition play test, and I had some little bears, and I was, using them for his responses. And what happened is that I ran out of bears before I got done with the test. So I would really encourage you, when you do have those toys in front of you, making sure you have enough, that the child was capable of doing the test. He was flying through it perfectly. There's no problems. And just because I gave him an out, he took it basically. So have enough of those toys available so that you don't run out and the child's like, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to sit here any longer. I'm done with the toys, so I'm done. So I would just really encourage you to make sure that you do have enough of the toys available. Just something that happens to all of us at times.
So on that same note with the toys, Janel has had a lot of experience screening special education or children with special needs, and she has a few tips and tricks for techniques that they use at Sumner in order to, get those screenings completed. So Janel, if you'd like to just explain a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So helpful for teachers to give instructions ahead of time, prior, so that the student knows what's going to happen. Tell the students that you want to have them listen to some very small beeps. And when they hear those beeps, to raise their hand. You can demonstrate by putting the headphones on yourself and saying beep, beep. Again, we use the same thing that Carrie was talking about. We use that as conditions to play. And we've come up with a system, as you can see here, with just a small collapsible basket. And we've used some tactile toys. And so take those out and explain to the child, here's your toy, and when you hear that sound, drop it in the basket. So we enjoy making that a game. And it works really well for us in Sumner County.
Thanks. So in addition to being able to do the testing, we did have a lot of questions regarding, how do you work with the teachers, and your hands-on experience, Janel, with this portion would be really helpful to the participants and listening, or the attendees that are listening, I should say.
Sure. Again, having that teacher prepare the students ahead of time on what to expect is so helpful. Often, many of our students have never had a hearing test before, and so they can be very anxious about it. Often they're unsure of what to listen for. And so if it's possible, we find, just like Carrie had mentioned before, students watching other students have that hearing test. It just reinforces, oh, okay, I see they're raising their hand. Okay, I think I have a better idea on what to do. So that just helps them feel a little more familiar with the process. Teachers are able to have a class ahead of time, possibly in their classroom, to talk about hearing. And before the screening, they can explain what's going to happen, how it's going to be conducted. This is a great time to have some visuals, maybe of the ear and the ear canal to be shown, as well as videos of other children having a health screening. This is an excellent time to talk about those students who do have hearing aids or implants, and how that is such an impact on their academics and helps them listen better. In coordinated school health, when a screening is scheduled, we do send a breakdown of explanations for every single station and what to expect for those teachers. We're also working on a video that will be played ahead of time. Our hope is to have a video for elementary students to see so they can watch and understand their peers, and then a separate one for middle school and high schoolers.
And then you have a few more ways of informing the teachers.
Absolutely. So before returning to the class, after the health screen is finished, we screen class by class. We have just a little note that we're able to chat with the teacher just for a couple of seconds and let them know who popped up as a refer. We also explain that this is not a true refer by any means, that it's a follow-up, And there are many reasons that there will be a follow-up, in a few weeks, and that there are many reasons that a child might have popped up as a refer. Some of these things are sickness, especially when most of our health screenings take place in the fall, the winter, and the early spring, allergies, ear infections, those type of things. And so while we're waiting on that 3-week follow-up with the SLP, we recommend a few things. Preferential seating is very helpful so that there's a direct line to the teacher's voice. And if a better ear has been identified, placing that ear closer to the teacher. We also recommend that teachers use appropriate clarification strategies to ensure that a student's understanding the oral information coming from the teacher. Repeating, rephrasing, speaking louder, being closer, things like that. Want very much, whenever possible, to avoid these things, such as a noisy environment. That's challenging. Whenever possible, asking the teacher to avoid standing in front of a bright window. That will be very difficult for a child to see the teacher's mouth and see them speaking. Having the teacher speak while writing on the chalkboard, which means their back is to the class, that is very difficult. And positioning themselves so that their face is not visible to the teacher, that's a real challenge. So just those little things that we don't think about but make a big impact in the classroom.
So during the process of screening, sometimes you run into students where it's very difficult to screen them, even the very young or those with special needs or even the older children. So we did have a lot of questions regarding how would you screen or techniques that you could use to screen students that are a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, so one of the options that you can do for screening those kiddos that have special needs or just unable to perform the pure tone screening is you can utilize an otoacoustics emissions device. So that is a device that there is no response required from the child. It's putting sound in the ear, and based off of the information that's coming back, it's determining if the child has normal hearing or not, or needs to go on for a refer. So that's something else that can be obtained within maybe the school system, just so that you have another option rather than referring a lot of the kids out for testing that you're just not able to complete. The other options here actually came from American Speech and Hearing Association. So this is on their website as far as testing some kids that are autistic, but can be used for any of the kids that have special needs. So, you know, maybe having the parent help you with the screening, or maybe having them kind of give you suggestions on what will work for that particular child, or having the parent kind of explain it to them days in advance and kind of just doing it multiple times so that they're aware and have an idea of what's going to be happening. You know, certainly even providing the product, the audiometer with them so they can kind of touch and feel is also another something that, you know, maybe the parent can help out with as well. You know, what are the motivators for that particular child, really understanding, and maybe that staff can assist you with that. You know, what would be encouraging for the child? Is a high five enough of a reward for them versus a verbal type of praise, or do they need a tactile reward? Or maybe is there a favorite toy that they will get to use once the screening is completed? You know, all of those types of things, having really understanding and knowing what's going to motivate that child. Like I said, practice may need to be completed in multiple trials. This could be maybe with the staff member or even with the screener, you know, having them come in, giving them a little bit at a time so that they can become comfortable with you as a screener, as well as the process, as well as the equipment is something else. And give the child time to warm up to you. So having someone new in front of them can be very scary, and they're unwilling to really establish that rapport. So, you know, don't talk about the hearing screening, just be fun and inviting to reduce fear so that they become comfortable with you as the person before you even entertain the idea of doing a hearing screening on them. Also, you can use terms like first ears, then break for language, or maybe even if they use picture cards to show them the progression of the test or the test routine, so they can have an idea of how much time are they going to have to, sit there, or how long is this process going to take, so they can see that it should not and will not take very long. You maybe use some language or picture cards for that. Certainly let the child touch the headphones, or even let them, place it on a stuffed animal so they can see how it works. You can use that with both the headphones as well as the OAE probe. So if you're going to be using a probe, letting them feel the tip with that ear tip on, and that it's soft and it's a rubber tip, so it's not going to hurt. Having them put it in a stuffed animal's ear so that they can see what that process is and how quickly it actually happens. And also with the headphones, letting them touch and feel them as well. Some headphones out there are a little bit more similar to some of the noise canceling, noise reduction type of headphones that they currently use. So some students do wear those. And so maybe having headphones like that for your equipment might make it actually more appealing for them to actually perform the test. We actually did have some schools look at some of the headphones that we have, and they actually gave us that feedback once we showed it to them. They said the kids were actually more apt to use the larger headphone because it's something that they're very accustomed to. And then also using alternative communication devices for the hearing screening. If they're using those AAC devices, making sure that they're bringing them to the screening so that they can be used for that purpose as well.
And then Janelle, you said you had some experience as well with screening difficult children or students. If you could just explain a little bit about what your techniques are.
Sure. Of course, we want to be serious about screening our children and our students, but often we have found, just like Carrie said, that making a game out of this just changes everything completely. So if they think it's fun or it's cool, we get a lot farther. So you can ask the student, something that we find is that we're going to check for supersonic hearing. So you can tell a student that someone who has supersonic hearing can hear even the smallest of sounds. And so let them know again, when you hear that tiny sound and that beep, raise your hand or use the switch. We also want to just do a recap and look at our screening environment. Are they even able to hear the sounds? Do we need to restructure the room so that they are able to hear that? Have we checked things like the headphones? Are they on properly and securely? And again, we do the same thing. Make sure that the headphones are on properly, glasses are off, we've tucked hair back behind the ears, and that there are no earrings that may be causing a problem. And at the same time, when a school health screening is scheduled, we've made it clear to the school that we're coming into that we need a very quiet environment. We need a room that we can close the door, and we have somebody stationed at that door to monitor, to let students come in and out. And this has helped us tremendously just create the right environment. This happens to us very rarely. So if we did have a problem, we would just refer to our standard 3-week process and ask our SLP, who is the expert in this area, to follow up for us.
So when you're looking at the hearing environment in a typical school, is it, best to kind of set up in a library, which is already kind of a quiet zone for them? Do you try to make that your go-to spot?
We do. We ask every school, and it has taken a while for them to understand, but being able to explain to them that at all costs we need to protect that hearing environment helps them understand. Having the speech and language therapist back that up and say, listen, I've got a lot to do. I can't be rescreening students just because our environment wasn't appropriate, that will help. And so once you can get in, like we did, to a quieter environment, which for us was a library, because students are conditioned when they walk into the library, it's got to be quiet. We have carpet in the library. It just has helped us tremendously. So generally, we'll be in a very large room, the largest room that we can get, and set up stations there. And again, having that person, which we call the bouncer, at that door to monitor, to close that door. We ask our people to whisper while they're giving directions. That's been very helpful. It has really brought down the number of screening referrals that we see.
Thanks. A lot of attendees wanted to know, about checklists and results and maybe what you have been doing in your scenarios or your screenings for you, Janel. So I know that you put together a few things here that have helped.
Absolutely. So per our Tennessee guidelines, our students are tested at 4,000, at 2,000, and 1,000 hertz. And each level is screened at 20 decibels. Now that we have the Mako Easytone audiometers, it gives us the most incredible opportunity to do a sweep, that conditioning at 50 decibels. And so that's how we begin. And we love this option because it sets the student up for success being able to hear a louder tone. And so when they're able to hear that at 50 decibels and we know that they're responding either by raising their hand or using the switch, then we go back and we begin. We start at the 4,000 hertz because we feel that it's easier for a student to recognize that and then move down. We feel that our screening has been shortened because of this, and we love the fact that the Mako Easytone also will do a recheck for any student who has missed one. It just automatically retests it over again. In our previous method that we were doing, if we had any failures, we would stop and retest and have someone else maybe retest on a different machine and start all over again. So that's streamlined the process for us, and we really like that. If a student does fail on that second time, we often have our school speech and language therapist with us. It's that important to them, and their supervisor has asked them if at all possible, to join us on that day. And that's been a wonderful collaborative opportunity for us to work together. So if that's the case, the school and language therapist will retest that third level. If they can't be with us, someone in coordinated school health will do it. We love being able to use an unlocked machine for our SLPs or for coordinated school health so that we can raise the decibel level in 5 decibel increments to be able to see where that student could hear that at. And again, it's a failure, considered a failure for us if they can't hear at that 20 decibels. So they will be rescreened in about 3 weeks or so. Failures that are most common for us, again, that we talked about are allergies, colds, ear infections, and sometimes excessive earwax.
So referral forms or best practices for what you're doing. We already talked a little bit about using the library because it is one of the largest rooms. And then you had a few more options here talking about, again, the bouncers, the pictures to show what the hearing aids or implants look like.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to elaborate on?
Again, less is best. We find that when we tell them way too many things or there's so much information going in, they just shut down. So that is something we have learned. Many times the students, if they're nonverbal or there's a language barrier, they're not sure what we're talking about because we always ask them previously, if they have any hearing aids that we cannot see, or if they have any ear problems. And so we'll show them a picture of what a hearing aid looks like. And that's very, very helpful. And again, there is a total of 3 hearing tests that are performed that day if a hearing failure actually happens. So the very first one, if they were to miss something, the second one again, this time they can be with the same screener because our new equipment does that for us. And then either by the SLP, the school SLP, or by ourselves.
And then you were very kind to show, example here of what your referral form looks like. If you want to just, quickly give us a little bit about what we're looking at.
Sure. So we obviously enter the information, and in about 3 weeks or so, this is what we will send to the SLP so that they're aware of who the students are, where they are, what grades they are, their homeroom, and then we give them some information. Sorry, it's hard for me to read down there at the bottom, but we give them exactly the information that we want them to do, and then this is the form that they will send back to us, along with the plan of care, so that we're able to make notes as we're reporting back to the state. So if this was a pass for them this time around, the ear infection is gone, they've taken their pink medicine, they always tell me it's pink medicine, generally. If it's been alleviated, then it's a pass. But if it's still a failure for the SLP, what their plan is then to contact the parents. They're the experts, they're the ones trusted that the parent wants to hear from. So the first line of thought is that we call and verbally speak to the parent. If that's not possible, an email or regular mail. And we're working very closely to close that gap and make sure that nobody is slipping through the cracks. We've put some things in place so that if there is a language barrier, we have the ability to speak to a parent in almost any language for the first time this year, and we're really excited about that resource for us.
Yeah, and you started to go into the follow-up stuff, so I just wanted to bring up your information here that you provided us about referrals and follow-up with parents.
Perfect. Yep. So again, in about 3 weeks, we try to rescreen them. They reach out to the parents. Coordinated School Health on our end will update our spreadsheet because most often these will be a pass with the SLP then. And then we will update our state spreadsheet, and also Skyward is the database that we use. When we update that, it does allow school staff to view so that they can be aware if the student is having a problem. That's very helpful, important again for teachers. And then again, working desperately to learn new ways to close that gap, and we work with our SLP team for the best outcome for our students.
Great, thank you. We're going to talk a little bit now about the equipment. We had some questions about equipment and what's available, what's out there. So Carrie mentioned this earlier about the headphone options. You can see here on the screen, we have kind of a visual of 2 different headphones that are currently available. On the left-hand side of your screen, the way I'm looking at it is the left-hand side. The young child there has the traditional, what I would call traditional headphones, where they're, more pressure on the ear, they're hitting the pin a little bit harder. And those are the ones that tend to be a little bit more uncomfortable for students. On the other side with the little girl, we actually show the headphones that are the circumoral headphones. So these are also the ones that are newer. They go in more with what Carrie was mentioning about children nowadays, with their playing of their games and things, they're used to these bigger headphones. These are also very comfortable, noise reducing. As you can see, the right and the left ear are color coded for you, and they're much more comfortable. There's also a single wire, so you're not getting anything tangled, whereas the other one, you've got the 2 wires coming from both headphones. So this is a nice option that is available and out there now for use if you wanted to update anything.
Hey, Maryellen, could I jump in
Yeah.
for a second and give feedback on those 2 headsets?
Sure.
It has changed the name of the game for us. We had those other ones, which were very tight. No matter what age, students would complain that it hurt, and they did not want to proceed with the test very often. It would get tangled in their hair, and sometimes clumps of hair would come out. With the new set that you will see there on the right, it has just been the greatest gift for us. So much easier to put on. They do not hurt. They truly are noise canceling. We had an SLP who was testing, and he hadn't been with us for a while, and so he kind of he had his first child, and he forgot to explain the directions ahead of time. So he put the headphones on and tried to explain, and the students just looking at him. And so he said, wow, these are really incredible. With this setup for us, we have had such a reduction in hearing referrals, and we're halfway through our year, that we all see the incredible difference from 15 to 18 to referrals to really 1 to 4. It has made that much of a difference for us. So we're excited to see what the data will say to us at the end of the year.
Great, thank you so much for that, Janel. So just moving on to the OAE, which of course Carrie also mentioned, you know, this is a auto capture. It captures within seconds. It's a pass refer. No one needs to respond. It's considered an objective screening tool, so you don't have to, you know, raise your hand or press a switch or do anything like that. It will automatically present the tones, and then it will provide that pass or fail based on the sound of the tones. It's typically recommended for children 0 to 3 years, or special needs, or English as a second language. But however, if anybody has an issue responding, just doesn't understand the instructions, it is a good alternate option for you to use going forward with your screenings. The pure tone audiometers that are available, obviously there are subjective tests, you know, it requires a verbal response or a physical response of some sort. And then it also is tests the complete auditory system. So what they're testing there is to make sure that, you know, I hear this, my brain understands what I'm hearing, and I am then relaying that back to whoever's doing the screening. Typically, this is the gold standard, and there are many states that really want you to be able to use this option. It is a little more difficult on those younger children, 0 to 3, but 3 to 5 years and older, it becomes much more easier for children to respond. So these pure tone audiometers are ones that are a little bit more accepted across the country. There is some software out there that can be used with these pure tone tests. It makes it a little bit simpler, faster, and easier. You're just connecting the device to your computer. What it does is it takes that information and automatically puts it into a form instead of you having to write it down in an audiogram and then transcribe it later. We know that a lot of you out there who do these testings, you know, you're spending a lot of time doing the transcription, but there there are softwares out there that can help you with that. And you can export these. You can also use them with some of the equipment that was mentioned today. There is one new product out there that I would feel bad if I didn't mention, the Easytone Tablet, and Janel did mention that they are currently using this. Well, this is an audiometer that was designed specifically for school screenings. We did get some questions out there about how do you screen mass amounts of children. And this is a semi-automated system that allows you to upload and import a list of students to screen. It also allows you to export the results, print the results. It speeds up the entire process. It allows you to customize your protocol and be able to put that in advance. As Janel was saying, you know, in Tennessee, they've got their standard 3 tones and their levels, and so they're pre-entering that information in, and then it's just running through the test for them. It does come with those circumaural headsets for the to be more comfortable and noise reducing. And then again, as I mentioned, you can print the results as well on those. A little bit about maintenance of your products, because a lot of people wanted to know, how do you maintain your products? I mean, equipment, you know, there are investments involved in being able to do that equipment, get the equipment, get it passed through administration. So cleaning is really important. You want to make sure that you're disconnecting the energy source when you're doing that. Any of the non-disposable parts, you want to also remove those. Anything that's in direct contact with the student, you want to make sure that you're cleaning those. This became extremely important during, COVID, when screening began to start again. How do we disinfect? What are we doing? So you only really want to disinfect the plastic housing and any of its accessories. So you're wiping the surface with some kind of alcohol-free disinfectant product, like such as a Sani cloth that's out there. And there are other very similar products to that, but I think the key to wiping this down is alcohol-free. I've had that question in the past, well, can I use alcohol or, an alcohol wipe? You could, but it will degrade the product over time. So you want to be very careful and not use that. So rather than using alcohol, you want to use something that's more like these, sanitary, Sani components and things. When you're storing your audiometers, you want to avoid obviously dropping or snapping the headphones together. It can affect, the way they're calibrated. I have two pictures here that show, the older set of headphones where you do not want to wrap the wire around there. That creates tension on your product and on your headphone wires, and they can become, disengaged from the headphones or need to be replaced more frequently. So the best practice is to not wrap them around that, and never let the child take the headphones off on their own. You always want to be the person that takes it on and off of that child. Calibration is a very necessary part of hearing screening equipment. And if you're using pure tone audiometers, you never want to interchange the headsets because they are specifically calibrated to that audiometer. So if you've got a malfunction or you think something's wrong with your headphones and you've got multiple units, you can't just take the headphone from one and put it on the other because you're not going to get the right calibration, and it's not going to potentially work for you for your hearing screenings. So it's a big thing to keep in mind. Don't interchange those. The other thing with calibration is, it's recommended to do the calibration yearly, every 12 months. You can extend that a little bit, but having your device calibrated is extremely important. And Carrie, I don't know if you want to elaborate on the calibration at all. I know you probably have a few things to say about that.
I think you said it. Definitely having your device calibrated is making sure it's within its tolerances, that the test that you're performing is accurate. Especially these are portable devices being banged around from car to the room, and things can happen. So definitely having them calibrated. And I think a lot of the states it's required, and probably it specifically says it's in their guidelines. So to follow your state guidelines, you also need to be having them calibrated, right? You cannot interchange headphones. Certainly the wires something can happen to the wire. It can, crack or something like that. But those are all repairable parts, so replacement parts that you can get for your headphones. So it's not where you need to get a whole new transducer to do any of those types of repairs. So that's a good thing that the manufacturers are, making sure that there's less cost in any repairs that could occur. So part of that calibration is having that technician really looking at the wires and everything too, to make sure that it's functioning appropriately. So right, not interchanging the headphones. One benefit, you mentioned the Easytone. The Easytone, because the audiometer is actually within the headphone, so it's a different type of transducer than what we see, but because the calibration is held within the headphone for the Easytone device, that can transfer from one tablet to another. So that's something else to kind of understand the differences between standard traditional audiometers and the newer products that are being introduced, such as the Easytone.
Thanks. The other thing is your carry case too. You're protecting your investment with it, so you want to, continue to watch it, make sure that it doesn't have any, tears or it's worn, and then you want to replace it because the carry case is a protective covering. It's also used to minimize any kind of dust on that equipment that might, jeopardize your screening. So be sure that part of your checklist that we were talking about becomes checking your equipment and making sure it's prepared for your hearing screenings as you begin getting started with them. So in summary, for any of your equipment that you might be using, you want to clean and disinfect it after use. Also, if you've got one that's battery operated, I know we didn't mention this earlier, but you want to take those batteries out before you're storing it. If anybody's stored their machines of any kind with batteries in it, if it's in a place, it can those batteries can start to ooze or something can happen, and then that is also not a really great way to keep that investment protected. Calibrating the headphones yearly, we talked about that, and storing in a location that is, between 30 and 95 degrees humidity. Now, what I always like to say is you want to treat your equipment like the way you treat your personal computers. You're not going to leave equipment in the car. Many of you travel from place to place to do hearing screenings. Take your equipment in with you if you're going to be overnight carrying it and then going in the morning. Make sure that you have the right conditions so that you're protecting that. We already talked about avoiding and snapping the headphones, and don't allow the children to take those headphones off because they don't know how to really take those off. Finally, we had some questions regarding funding. So we all know that funding can be a bit of a challenge in equipment, supply chain and demand and everything that's happening with equipment. It can be expensive, and again, I continue to say it's an investment, but it's a really important investment for you and for the health of the children that you're screening. So just a few quick things about funding. Traditionally, funding can be done through fundraising, community outreach. We've worked with a lot of people where the mothers and fathers clubs or the PTAs are, doing the fundraising, and then they're providing that. Obviously, there are some budgets and grants. You should be checking your state, service areas to see if there are grants available. And then we've also had a lot of Lions clubs that not only work to serve you and help you with your screenings, but they're very, open to, raising the funds for you and helping you purchase equipment that you need in order to do your screenings. Finally, we are very fortunate right now to have some ESSER funding still available. It's the new ESSER funding is now through the end of September of 2024, so September 30th of 2024. And that funding can be used to address, learning loss through implementing evidence-based interventions. Now, this is particularly a quote from what that funding states. All of the equipment that we've kind of mentioned here, the pure tone audiometers, the OAE, the tablet audiometers, those are all evidence-based products. And we all know that we learn a lot through hearing. Those who cannot hear, there's social, emotional, and different effects that it will have on the children. So this falls under your ESSER funding guidelines for what you can do. So check with your administration, check your funding, see what's available, and maybe you can enhance your equipment that you currently have, update some of the equipment you currently have, or get something that you've wanted and not had that would really benefit the learning of your students. So that concludes. I don't know if Janelle or Carrie, if you wanted to add anything. I just, if anybody has any questions, my information is here. Feel free to reach out to me. We really do appreciate all of the questions that came in and want to thank you. As I mentioned at the beginning, we didn't probably get to everyone's questions, but we will be reaching out to you. But feel free to send us an email or give me a call if you had something specific that you wanted to know about. Janelle, Carrie, anything to add?
I will say that every opportunity that I have to bring in the classroom teacher so they can see how we're screening changes how they feel about their students being out of the classroom for this short amount of time. They continue to be amazed at our screening equipment, how we're screening students, and that in turn makes such an impact on the learning environment in the classroom. Every principal that walks by, we show them, we screen them often. And so if you are having concerns about how it's being viewed, interact with those teachers, with your school administration. Parents will often come and help us, and then they come back for years to come because they've enjoyed it, and they feel so grateful that this is being offered to their child. So that in turn could help you with funding as well once they see the outcome. Healthy students learn best, and that's the goal. So it's exciting to see where we're going.
Thanks. Carrie, anything?
No, I think you guys said it all, honestly. I've had some opportunities to really be able to perform some screenings as well as observe some screenings, and I understand how hard it is and how hard it can be, and not only from the child perspective, but from the administration perspective, finding those locations that you're required to do. So I just want to thank everyone for doing what you're doing and making sure that these kids are being screened and evaluated and being helped when they need to be helped. And thank you for letting me to participate in the presentation. It was wonderful working with you both and being able to provide the information to your users.
Thank you. And thank you both for your time and all of your attention to the questions and everything that we received from the attendees today.
And I'd like to say a thank you to all of you because this was very thorough and covered a lot of information. We appreciate you sharing your experiences with us. Would you guys like to say any final words, or is that it?
I think we've said it all.
All right. Again, thank you guys for everything. That's all the time we have for today. So thank you for attending today's webinar. We hope you're able to take a lot out of the presentation and found the information useful. Once again, we'd like a big thank you to Dr. Carrie Browning, Janel Garrett, and Maryellen O'Keefe-Smith for sharing all this important information with us. After you exit the webinar, you'll see a survey window. Please note that this survey will not appear on the recording. We would ask each of you to please take a moment for this brief survey and help us improve what you've done here today, what we've done here today, and that will end today's broadcast. Thank you for joining us.